Hello class. Today we are going to go over in this video how you use Eclipse and Derby for Chapter 24 homework, which is dealing with databases. And for Chapter 24 we're going to be using the Apache Derby database. What this video tutorial is going to show you is how you set up and configure an Eclipse project in order to use the embedded Derby driver to create a database for your homework. Okay. Now, I have a file on my desktop here called 24-Accessing Databases with JDBC. This is the zip file that you can download from the lecture notes off of Blackboard. For convenience, I have everything in the zip file that you need. Optionally, if you want to go and search and download a different version of Derby from their website, you can do that. But for convenience, I have everything in the zip file for you ready to go. So after you have downloaded the lecture notes for Chapter 24 onto your desktop, what you want to do is go ahead and open it up in whatever zip utility you have on your computer. And when you do that, you'll see it contains one directory, so I'll browse into that directory. And now I have a whole bunch of files and directories. What I'm looking for is this file right here, db-derby-10.14.1.0. This is the Derby application itself. Again, if you want to, you can go search on Google for Apache Derby and download it directly from the Derby website. But for convenience, I have placed it here in the zip file in the lecture notes. So what we're going to do is just drag and drop this and extract it onto the desktop. Okay, so now the zip file for the Derby application is on the desktop. So I can go ahead and close 7-zip. I don't need that anymore at the moment. So now that I have the Derby zip file on the desktop, I need to unzip this somewhere so that I can actually use the files that are inside of Derby. The question is, where am I going to unzip this? Well, I'm going to show you where I put stuff. You can put it wherever you want, but I'm going to show you where I usually unzip applications that I download. I'm going to go to my computer, and I'm going to go to my C drive, users. This is my username, so on your machine it'll obviously be different. And then inside of my username, I create an applications directory. Okay, these are the things that I typically download and install off the internet. So inside of my applications directory, I'm going to create a new folder called Derby. I'm going to browse into it. And now I have a folder where I can unzip the Derby application. So remember, Derby is right here on the desktop as this zip. So I'm just going to drag and drop. And when I drag and drop with my right mouse, and when I let go of the right mouse, I get this context menu. And I'm just going to say, tell 7-zip to extract the files here. And just click OK. Now this will take a few moments to unzip. Derby is a 100% Java database, which means it's completely written in Java. It is SQL ANSI compliant, so you can run pretty much any standard SQL queries that any other database uses, but it just has the advantage of it being 100% Java and very small. Okay, so now that it's finished unzipping, you see that it created the db-derby-10.14.1.0-bin directory. And if I sometimes it'll go ahead and create two directories, and if it does that, that's okay. In my case, it did. I don't typically like the two directories, so I'm just going to move these all up one level. And so if I look at my directory path, I have applications Derby, db derby 10.14.1.0, and here are all the files that are inside of it. Now the directory that I'm interested in at the moment is this lib directory. So let's go ahead and navigate into the lib directory, and you'll see a whole bunch of jar files. The one that I'm interested in is this one right here called derby-jar. All right, we'll be using that in just a little bit. Now that we have Derby unzipped and installed on your computer, let's go over to Eclipse and let's create a new project. So I'm going to say new Java project, and we're going to call this embedded Derby demo. And I'm going to leave just about all the defaults and just go ahead and say finish. Okay, so now I have a project called embedded Derby demo. You should have a source directory, which is where you'll put all your code. That's standard. And you should also see this library directory telling me that it's using Java 1.8. Now the first thing that we want to do is we need to be able to configure this project so that it knows about this derby-jar file so that when I run my application, it can use Derby inside of my application. So the way I'm going to, there's many ways that you can do this, and if you search online and read in the book, they'll probably give you their different ways. But I'm going to show you an easy way, which is good because if you copy your project from, let's say, your home computer to a USB drive to another computer, everything goes with it inside of that project directory, and you don't have to reconfigure your project if you open it on a different machine. So what we're going to do is, first thing we're going to do is we're going to right click on the project, and we're just going to say I want to create a new folder. Just a folder, that's it. And I'm going to call the folder lib, L-I-B. And you can see that now I have a new folder called lib inside of my project. Now that I have that, I'm going to go back over to my window here where Derby was unzipped, and I'm just going to drag and drop the derby-jar file right onto the lib directory. After I release the mouse, it's going to give me an option for how I want to copy. Do I want to actually copy the file or make a link to the file? Accept the default copy files. Okay, do not select link to files. You want to select copy files. And I'm going to just click OK. So when I did that, you can see this got the little caret here, which indicates that there's something inside of this directory. And now you can see that derby.jar file is in there. So nothing too exciting here. This is just a file copy. I copied the derby.jar file from its location inside of applications, my username applications derby db-10.14.1.0 into the lib directory of my Eclipse project. Okay, just a simple file copy. We're using the embedded driver, so this is all that we need. This is everything that the application needs, is this derby.jar file. Okay, now that I've copied the file into this folder, that doesn't mean that Eclipse knows about it yet. So now I need to configure my project so that Eclipse knows that this derby.jar file is there. So the way that I do that is I right-click on embedded, I right-click on the project name, I go down to Properties, and I get this dialog box that pops up. And if it's not selected over here in the tree, I want to select where it says Java Build Path. Okay. When you select Java Build Path, the main window will change, and you have a bunch of tabs up here. And then you want to make sure that you select the Libraries tab. Okay. So depending on what you used last, it may be showing something different when you go to Properties, but you want to select Java Build Path and then the Libraries tab. When you have the Libraries tab, you'll see this box, which is almost empty. The only thing that is in it is the Java 1.7. I'm sorry, Java 8. For your computer, it might be a little bit different, but the point here is that what you see here should match what you have right here. Now, what I want to do is, the whole reason I'm doing this, I need to tell the project about the derby.jar file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this Add Jars button. Okay, I don't want to select Add External Jars, I want to select Add Jars. So I'm going to go and do that. And then when I do that, the project is selected. If you have many projects, you may have to find your project. But you want to find the embedded Derby demo project. And then you want to drill down into the lib derby.jar and select a derby.jar file. And then you click OK. After you do that, you should see Now two items in this box, derby.jar and the JRE. And then all you have to do now is say apply and close. Okay. After doing that, you should see this tree change. Okay. What you should see is now an option that says reference libraries, and if I hit the little caret there, you'll see derby.jar. So you have visually derby.jar in two different places, but they're performing very different functions. This one is just directory browsing. It just tells you that there is a live directory inside of your project, and there's a file in there called derby.jar. This is the important one. This one is telling you that your Eclipse project is now configured to reference the derby.jar file, and so now your project knows about Derby. So now you're free to go ahead and create your application. So now I'm going to create a new class. I'm going to put it in the ramajan.m directory, and I'm just going to call it main. And I'm just going to select that I want public static void main method, and just go ahead and finish. Okay. Now, because I know I'm going to be doing stuff with databases, which may throw exceptions, the first thing I'm going to do is just say throws exception. Okay, I get rid of this comment, and now I'm just going to paste in the code that I have for Derby. And looks like I lost pasting, so let me go ahead and copy this again. I'm just going to go ahead and paste, and there we go. All right, now when I go ahead and paste, let's go ahead and fix the compile errors first, and then we'll go ahead and look at what this code is doing. Remember also I'm going to be covering this code in class. So I got two compile errors. So if I left click on the little red X, it'll tell me that I need to import connection from java.sql. Say that, and so now I got the import statement. And driver manager has a compile error, so I go ahead and left click that and say import driver manager. And so now I have both of those there. Okay, so let's take a look at this. This is just three classes. I'm going to put ahead and just put a done goodbye statement, just so that I know that the application has ended. So let's take a look at these three. This first line, class 4 name, registers what database driver I have configured for my application. Okay, so I'm telling Java that I'm going to be using the embedded driver. Okay, now the embedded Derby driver means that the database will actually run inside of my application. Okay, so I don't have to start the database as a separate process. The database will start and run inside of my application, which is really, really nice. The second thing that we're going to look at here is this connection URL. I'm going to just select all of this right here up to, but not including the semicolon. And I'm just going to go ahead and change this to something like name. Okay, so the syntax of this is very, very important to get correct. So it's JDBC colon Derby colon. Here I'm just going to, this is the name of the database. So we're just, let's say we're going to call this, instead of name, let's call this contacts. Okay, semicolon, user equals, semicolon, password equals, semicolon, create is equal to true. Now, there's two important parts to this connection URL. One, create is equal to true. That will tell Derby to create the database if it does not already exist, and Derby will create the database for you automatically. This right here, contacts, is the name of the database that you want created. Okay, so create is equal to true tells Derby create the database if it doesn't already exist, and Derby will, and in this case when I run it for the first time, it'll find that it doesn't exist, and so it's going to create a database called contacts. Okay, now this line of code, is what is used to actually establish a connection to the database. Okay, this is standard JDBC stuff. We'll go over this in class. But what will happen is when you say get connection, Java will say, okay, I have this URL connection, which means I want to create a Derby database, which means I'm going to use this driver to do it. And then when this driver runs, it's going to say, okay, create the database if it doesn't already exist, and the database that I'm going to create is called contacts. Okay. Now let's go ahead and run this application and see what happens. Okay, it's going to run for just a few minutes. And then here we see I have a goodbye message. Got a little typo here. I didn't do %n%n. Okay, and just for good measure, I'm just going to copy and paste this so that we know what it's doing next time, and say something like connecting to and creating the database. Okay, now after I ran this for the first time, it doesn't look like anything happened, but what we need to do is we need to go over to our project. We have to right click and say refresh. When we do that, we'll see a new directory popped up called contacts. The name of this directory matches what we put here in the connection string. Okay, and if I drill down into it, you see all this stuff, especially this file here that says readme do not touch files. All of these files inside of this contacts directory is your Derby contact database. Okay, and remember, because I said create is equal to true, when I ran this application for the first time, it didn't exist, so Derby went ahead and created the database for you. Okay, this database is just a folder called contacts inside of your Eclipse project directory. Okay, because contacts is just a relative path, Derby goes ahead and creates it inside of your Eclipse project directory. Okay, so again, this right here, this contacts directory is your Derby database. Okay, Derby also always creates a derby.log file. You can take a look at this. It just has some information on it. Nothing too exciting. Okay. Now, just to show this again, I'm going to go ahead and select these two and delete them. Okay, so now that they're gone, and I'm going to run this application again. Okay, it says connecting to and creating the database. This takes a little while. You can see here by the red box, it's still running, and it's now done. And the application indicates that it has finished running by outputting goodbye. And again, it doesn't look like anything happened here, but if we right-click and do a refresh, we'll see the contacts database has been created by Derby inside of this contacts directory. Again, this is your Derby database. Okay, so as this name and file says, do not touch any of these files. You have to create all of the queries and SQLs inside of your application in order to create tables and insert data and delete data. But this demo just shows how I go ahead and create an embedded driver. Okay, now if I were to run this one more time, but again keep this directory, not delete it. If I say run as Java application, you'll see that it ran a lot faster than it did the last time. That's because this directory already exists, and so it didn't have to go ahead and create the database. All right, that's about it. This is the very basics of creating, configuring Eclipse with Derby and writing an application to create an embedded Derby database when you run your application. For your homework, you'll have a lot of other stuff to do. Your application will be a lot bigger, and so you'll use this connection to run additional queries, to be able to create tables, to be able to insert and delete and update data. But this is the basics of get you started. Once you have this done and you're able to create and connect to a database, now you're free to go ahead and write the rest of the application to do whatever it is that you need it to do. All right. Thank you for listening.